Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
Stephen and Camille have been working at the same hospital for 20 years. They came together shortly after graduating from university when they were both 25. Stephen built a brilliant career as a medical surgeon. Camille, on the other hand, found herself in cardiology. They fell in love with each other. They were still at university, of course, but they decided on a serious, full-fledged relationship. After a couple years of working in the same area, all to blame for the fact that before rising high on the career ladder, Stephen was extremely worried that he would not be able to provide such a beautiful, educated girl a happy, trouble-free future. In time, all fears and worries disappeared. The wedding rattled worthy. Colleagues could not admire the newfound family. Now Stephen and Camille turned 45. A lot of time had passed. A lot of trials had fallen on their heads. But the most important turning point for the two doctors was the death of their only son. It happened 2 years ago. It took the parents a long time to recover. Christopher had just turned 16 years old. He got involved with a group of teenagers, trailer riders. They rode on the roofs of commuter trains. But one day Christopher jumped off the train and crashed. He was still alive when he was taken to the best hospital in town where his parents worked. But his injuries were incompatible with life. Christopher died. With his passing, Stephen and Camille changed as well. Stephen there brought in a 6-year-old child in serious condition. He needed to be operated on immediately. The head nurse burst into the surgeon's office with a look of fright on her face. The doctor could not move from his seat. In his memory, the pictures from the past, how he fought for the life of his own son, but lost. Tears appeared on the mature man's cheeks. The nurse knew Christopher, so she only tried to bring the doctor to his senses while he could still save someone. "Please, you're needed in there. That boy needs you." She ran up to the surgeon and gave him a little shake on the shoulder. Stephen woke up as if from a deep sleep and rushed into the OR. The boy was saved, and the doctor went out into the corridor with a heavy burden on his soul. Saving people no longer brought any satisfaction. Whenever the operation was successful, the surgeon sobbed the next few nights in the arms of his wife Camille. This time it was the same. The man could not sleep a wink. At 2:00 a.m. Stephen was once again overcome by a hysterical wave. "Camille, why was I able to save another man's child, dozens of other people's children, but not our Christopher? God, I don't understand why." A man blamed himself for his son's death for not keeping him safe. "It's not your fault. Beloved, calm down. I beg you, I beg you." Tears were streaming down his wife's cheeks. However, she tried to ease the pain in the soul of her desperate husband. "You do not understand what kind of doctor I am, if my own son did not save. How am I supposed to live with this?" Stephen clutched his head. "We'll get through this. I know for a fact we'll get through this. You'll see." Camille stroked her husband's face, wiping away his tears at the same time. "It will never be the same again." The surgeon blurted out and turned away. In the morning, when Stephen and Camille were getting ready for work, they did not say a word. A kind of emptiness overcame the two of them. They didn't want to eat or drink, or even dress properly. "Honey, shave today. You really need to get a grip on yourself." The wife finally decided to have a little dialogue. "I don't want to. What does it matter what I look like? What's it gonna change? Our Christopher? No. It's been 2 years. Don't torture yourself. It's hard for me too." But Camille didn't have time to finish her sentence because her husband interrupted her. "I died 2 years ago. I died with my son. I don't care about the beard. I don't care about the clothes. I exist, you see. There's no point in anything anymore." Stephen disappeared into the kitchen, showing his reluctance to continue the conversation. At work, the surgeon was still a little distracted from the past routine worries. Operations, a huge number of new people around. Stephen blamed himself, however, and in this he apologized to Christopher whenever he seemed to replace thoughts of his son with something else. "Christopher, son, I'm begging you. Forgive your father. I have to think of you every second. Don't doubt that Daddy is there for me and you." The man tilted his head to the heavens and addressed his dead son. Colleagues of the couple with such a terrible episode from the past always condescended to the detached behavior of the successful surgeon. Everyone understood everything and did not press unnecessary questioning, and did not interfere with advice. However, among themselves often discussed what was happening. And today, sitting in the dining room, two doctors again raised the conversation about the surgeon's grief, which he still could not cope with. "Emily, maybe you could offer your help again. It's painful to watch. The pride of our hospital. And it's like he's lost the meaning of life. What do you think?" The dentist went to a fellow therapist. "He doesn't want to hear about help. You can't push too hard. It will only make things worse." The woman also explained that all people deal with this kind of stress in their own way. Some take 6 months, some take 10 years to get back to a full life. For example, Camille, Stephen's wife, had the help of a psychologist and a therapist. Either they helped her. Either the woman is just the kind of person who needs less time to rehabilitate after severe stress. The cardiologist, little by little, came to terms with the loss of her son and tried in every way to convince her husband to start a new life. But all attempts failed miserably. Stephen was not interested in trips to the restaurant to relax and forget. Theaters, exhibitions, everything was in vain. His father denied the fact that, having lost a child, one could enjoy all the benefits of humanity anew. The man was disgusted even by the fact that he had allowed himself to smile a couple of times on his wedding anniversary and on his birthday. "To my beloved Camille, may I come in?" Camille opened the door, which proudly displayed her husband's nameplate. Of course, dear Stephen looked at his wife fondly, for she had once again brought his lunch directly to his workplace. The surgeon had already forgotten the last time he'd gone down to the dining room, as he was so damn uncomfortable. Sitting for half an hour with so many people. He didn't want to see anyone. Patients and coworkers in appointments and surgeries. He had more than enough. Stephen had not become a recluse. However, he wanted to avoid unnecessary attention and conversations at every opportunity: chicken soup and cutlets. "That's it. How do you like it? Eat, please, you've only had coffee this morning. This is not the way to do it." The wife carefully put the containers on the table and sat down next to him. "There's no appetite lately." Stephen stared at the computer monitor, as if running away from himself had made him skinny. "You're all grown up. I'm already noticing slanted eyes on you. Listen to me. It's time for a change." Camille put her arm around her own man, giving him a sense of protection. "Maybe you have a point, but I can't bring myself to go back to normal." Stephen kissed his wife on the cheek, but very dryly, without much emotion. "I could do it, so you can do it." It might seem to some that Stephen blames his wife for her recovery from the loss, and even makes some plans for the future. However, that was not the case. Stephen was not judging his wife. He knew that she was going through the same thing, because Christopher was also her reason for living. Yes, now Camille is immersed in work, engaged in new hobbies, goes periodically to meetings with friends. But this is not an indicator that the woman has forgotten her son. "Give me time." The surgeon cut off his wife's next attempt to have a heart-to-heart talk and heal his wounds. Several doctors had gathered in the dining room again, and among them a cardiologist. Colleagues were heatedly discussing innovations in the healthcare system. However, when Camille was present in person at the dinner table, they did not lose the opportunity to inquire about her husband's current condition. Everyone felt sorry for the woman, for she was not guilty of anything, but was left without a son and without a husband. Her husband was there, but more as a good friend with whom she had a sad past. Some girlfriend's doctors even advised Camille to separate from her husband in order to rescue him from the clutches of prolonged depression. The woman did not agree to any of the proposed options. She did not want to traumatize Stephen even more. Of course, many psychologists and ordinary people faced with trouble believe that one grief, another all the same can be cured. But Camille was not comfortable with that tactic. "My girls, thank you for your support, but we'll manage on our own. I think things will get better soon. Don't worry." Camille finished her lunch, and after wishing her colleagues a good day, she left to see the new arrivals. The day was, as it turned out, disastrously long. The patients kept coming and coming. Suddenly, Camille had the idea to take a vacation and go somewhere far away with her husband for a change of scenery. After Christopher's death, his parents had never gone anywhere together, not even to the countryside to get some fresh air. The woman decided tonight to try to convince her husband to take a week off at his own expense. For some reason, this idea had seemed impossible to her before. But now Camille suddenly felt that Stephen would agree. What the hell? If she won, perhaps this vacation would open a new breath in their family. If she lost, Camille would at least tell herself that she had definitely made the best of it, that she could risk everything or back down treacherously, accepting life as it was. The first option Camille was much more attracted to. Stephen was having a serious long-term operation, so he returned home in the late afternoon and was completely exhausted. His wife hesitated whether to start the conversation or to wait for the right day. This best and truest day may never come, she said to her reflection in the bathroom mirror, and went over to her husband, who was picking his dinner with a fork. You're not hungry again. After such a long operation, you need to be well nourished. Honey. Camille sat down next to Stephen, stealing a small piece of cooked carrot from his plate. The husband didn't even bat an eye. He didn't care that he was torturing and wearing out his own body. The father wanted his son back. Then he would eat various dishes with pleasure, in a wholesome family environment full of harmony and happiness. This was not destined to come true today, tomorrow, or in 10 years. Stephen, there's something we need to discuss. Just don't say no right away. Camille stared enthusiastically at the man. Good. Stephen showed no emotion. As always, I've got my eye on a lakeside cottage at a recreation center 10 hours away. Nature is expressive, delicious, fresh fish in unlimited quantities. By the way, your favorite fishing is available right on the property too. It's been so long since you've done anything. Let's take a trip. Camille came out all at once, but it was too late to back out. The mechanism had been set in motion. It was either all or nothing. Stephen remained silent for a long time, showing no sign of interest. Let's go if you want. The man's words, which sounded after 20 minutes of silence, led his wife first into a stupor, and then gave a wild delight. I knew you'd say yes. You won't believe this, but I felt it. Stephen, I'll organize everything. Don't worry, you'll be pleased. Camille went on to share details about her plans for this week's vacation. For example, that they should have time not only to enjoy the beauty of these places, but also to engage in active activities. The woman listed various suggestions, which included catamaran riding and a day hike in the forest in the company of professionals, as well as conquering the Ropway and cooking soup together on the fire with self-made fire. Such uncomplicated but quite exciting activities offered by the staff of this recreation center. Choose it yourself. Stephen, though, agreed to his wife's adventure, but clearly did not want to take part in all this. Several days passed. Camille agreed with her boss about an unscheduled vacation with her husband for a week. No one was against it. On the contrary, colleagues only supported the woman's initiative to establish a family life. Are you doing the right thing? Well done. Emily, a psychotherapist, met the surgeon and his wife in the hospital corridor and wished them a good time. Thank you, Emily. Camille winked at her colleague, indicating that that was it. It worked. In the evening, Stephen and Camille started packing for the trip. The woman was running from room to room. Stephen, where are your shorts? You know, the ones with the stripes. I can't find them anywhere. She was deliberately pestering her husband with requests and questions to get him a little more excited and into vacation mode. I don't know. Look on the bottom shelf in the closet. Haven't worn them in years. Camille's tactic really worked, and her perpetually aloof spouse did start packing. Oh yeah, found it. Why don't you take care of the underwear? Can you please put everything neatly in a bag and leave it in a conspicuous place? We'll forget something. The woman suddenly jumped up to her husband and hugged him from behind. She thanked him for agreeing to the change of scenery. She thanked him for listening to her. Camille felt good to feel like a wife again, not just a family member. By misfortune, Camille pressed herself even tighter against Stephen's back. Such a simple action, but it brought her a lot of positive emotions. The woman was reminded of moments, happy married life, when a successful, self-confident surgeon carried her in his arms, showered her with compliments, invited her on romantic dates, made surprises. And remember, the first month after the wedding, Camille covered her eyes and fell into a flood of memories. "I do, honey. I do." Stephen answered dryly, but his wife still caught a hint of happiness in his voice. "About the years we lived together. How young we were, how crazy we were at 50. And then it seemed that 30 was old." Camille smiled. Stephen seemed to come alive at that moment. Heaven knows what had influenced the surgeon, whether it was his wife's words, or memories of his youth, or simply the time to say goodbye to the pain and let go of the guilt. The man turned Camille towards him and hugged her very tightly. What followed was a passionate kiss, the kind of kiss that both of them had not experienced in 2 years. "Camille, my love, I'm here with you again. Forgive me for not contacting you for so long. I'm over it. I can now say with confidence that we're moving on together." Stephen stunned his stunned wife with his sudden confession. "Darling." Camille had tears of happiness in her eyes, only. "Let's stop by the church tomorrow. On the way I have to put a candle in and explain to Christopher that he will never be forgotten. But from now on, Daddy and Mommy are opening a new page in the book of their lives." Stephen also burst into tears, but not from pain, but from being free. Those who have lost loved ones will understand that the pain will never go away. It can subside, but it can disappear without a trace. It can't. Stephen accepted his son's death. How did Camille accept it? Yes, it took a lot longer, but it's done. Now the parents, who have lost the meaning of life, must rise a step higher and fill their souls with something fresh and rainbow. The main thing is that the memory of the child will not be erased over the years, but will only be even more firmly rooted in the hearts where Dad, Mom, and their beloved. Christopher were so happy together for sure. Good idea. Camille expressed solidarity in her husband's desire to say goodbye to his son together, to let him go. Christopher would very much like his parents not to torture themselves again, could breathe fully. In the morning, Stephen's car was fully loaded with bags and bags of bags. Camille was cutting sandwiches for the road. As usual before a long trip. "Camille, why were you in the kitchen so early? We could have stopped at the cafe for breakfast." Stephen reprimanded his hostess. "We can eat at the cafe. It's no trouble at all. Have some sausage. There's hot tea in the thermos if you want it." Camille rustled the cellophane in the passenger seat. "There'll be a turn to the church soon. Get your handkerchief ready. We'd better go later." Stephen and his wife spent about an hour in the temple. They were able to talk to the priest and also to talk to a couple who, like them, had experienced loss. Camille exchanged phone numbers with a new acquaintance. Both women thought it would be good to meet sometimes and support each other. All the same, people whose children are at their side 24 hours a day will never understand parents whose sons and daughters will never again grace them with smiles and laughter. Camille and Stephen's entourage were the only kind of friends we had. Thank you for your kind words. Camille hugged her new acquaintance and followed her husband into the car. Nice couple. It's a shame that trouble had befallen them too. Camille looked out the window at the passing cars and talked to her husband. I felt even better after the temple. I feel that Christopher has really blessed us with a new life. Thank you, my son. Stephen looked up to heaven and turned to his son. I'm glad. To be honest, before I offered you the trip, I decided that this was the last time I would make an attempt to get you back. Camille looked down, realizing that it might hurt her husband. I understand. Darling, you have done so much for me during these 2 years of suffering. I'm happy I married you. I could have proposed to you sooner. But I was such an insecure boy. The surgeon smiled for the first time in a long time. The important thing is that we are together and have many years ahead of us. Camille snuggled into her husband's shoulder. The 10-hour drive tired the couple. That's why on arrival, they went straight to the 7 days rented wooden house. A wooden house. The interior surprised and amazed the guests. That's Stephen that Camille did not expect to see such a stunning room design. All pieces of furniture and even some of the dishes were made of wood. The hunting-style chandeliers with deer antlers had obviously cost a lot of money. The view was impressive not only from inside, but also from the panoramic window. A slice of lake and picturesque forests caught the eye. As soon as the massive curtains opened, here in this cabin, Stephen and Camille's new life was beginning. Hand in hand with only a happy husband, Stephen, and an elated wife, Camille. After a detailed look at the rooms and a frank conversation about how they would now make their many plans, fulfill a wish, and support each other in all endeavors, the couple plopped down on the wide bed. No one could disturb them, and that evening Camille gave Stephen a relaxing massage. And he, in turn, kissed the woman from head to toe. Let's take a bath together. They even left us rose petals as a gift. Camille immediately noticed the romantic gesture on the part of the staff of the recreation center, but was not sure that at their age it would be appropriate to use such a surprise. Stephen did not hesitate to agree. The couple spent about 40 minutes in the relaxing hot bath, and then both fell asleep. With smiles on their faces, the light of the moon and the glow of the stars enveloped the loving couple with their warmth, and hoped 6 days of vacation. The surgeon and cardiologist were insanely happy. They were more like newlyweds who can't breathe in each other's breath than a married couple who had lived for 20 years. There was only one last day left. Camille and Stephen planned to spend it fishing. The weather was sunny but not too hot. All in all, a perfect time to relax on the lake. The special fishing instructors issued the necessary equipment to the guests and left them alone. First, Stephen decided to explain the rules of fishing to Camille, as she had never shared his hobby and did not know how or what to do. After a brief instruction, she assured her husband that he was an excellent teacher, and now she would catch the biggest fish. He, of course, was not so sure of his companion's abilities, but still wished her success. "Look, it's biting," Camille shouted across the lake. However, she accidentally dropped the rod and lost the catch. "Honey, I told you the fish likes silence. Why are you yelling like that? I'm almost deaf." Stephen took out the lost inventory and handed it to his wife. "That's right. It slipped my mind. I was scared of my own voice." The fish must have decided to run away in the first place. Camille laughed. "Try it again." Not only Stephen was excited about fishing, but also Camille, who did catch some big fish. After a while, she got completely involved in the process and began to feel this subtle, unsophisticated. An occupation like fishing. The woman even regretted that she used to refuse to go fishing with her husband. Then Stephen would bring a lot of catch, and she would just throw up her hands. Camille did not want to clean so many fish, but now she was ready to share any of her husband's hobbies and enjoy their time together. Next on the plan was cooking soup on the fire. The smell of fresh fish, a pleasant breeze, favorite husband near that husband, who again bestows Camille with attention and compliments. Harmony reigned in the family. The couple felt each other even better than before. Stephen only had to open his mouth, as his wife was already standing next to the necessary seasonings for the soup. Understanding without words is the true indicator of true love. That's exactly what Camille thought. Thanks to all the saints for this vacation. It's delicious, darling. I've never had fish soup like this before. The flavor is incredible. The woman was actively eating the soup with a spoon. That's a good soup. I agree with you there. Stephen also emptied his plate at an enviable rate. We're going home tomorrow. How would you like to stay longer? Camille sighed sadly, showing her reluctance to return to the routine of work and life. Then let's stay. Stephen smiled and reached for another bite of his ear. You know there's no way. We are doctors, you and I. We have to heal. Who else but us? Camille asked Stephen to add some soup for her too. Yes, my love. You're absolutely right. All these years of studying, practicing, gaining experience. We'll help people while we can. For our son's sake, Stephen realized that he remembered Christopher in a different way, without anxiety, without heartbreaking pain. He remembers him as the angel who was with them on earth and now watches over them from heaven. After a satisfying dinner, the couple retired to their wooden cabin to pack. Their passion interrupted the packing. Every now and then the couple found themselves on the bed. They were magnetically drawn to each other. It seemed as if fate had no more chance of throwing them off the path. Let's go for one last walk. Now that all the bags are in the car, that's all we have to worry about. All we have to do is stay awake tomorrow morning and get there on time. Sure, Camille. Why not? Stephen smiled and hugged his wife again. The evening forest surrounding the campground was mesmerizing in the moonlight. Stephen complained that he would be a fool to give up his vacation and not have the opportunity to see such beauty. Camille said something witty, and they both laughed. The cool breeze helped make the evening a little more romantic as Stephen's light jacket slipped over his wife's shoulders. She was even a little embarrassed, as if she were a girl who was on a date for the first time and not ready for such gestures from her aunt's beau. Hello. A child of about 5 years old was walking towards the couple. Hi. How cute are you? Where's your mom? I see a baby over there. How are you? She stroked the boy's hair affectionately. The baby came closer to the woman and stretched its arms to her belly. What's wrong, baby? It's cold. Camille touched the tiny hands, but they were warm. Lealia, the baby said and ran to his mom. Mommy there, Lola, came the voice of a boy who was talking to his parents, a little away from Stephen and Camille. Will you forgive him? He's very sociable. The young mother hurriedly apologized for her hyperactive child. That's all right. He's a good kid. May he grow up to be a real big boy. Stephen always wished people well. Like so many other doctors, they went back to their cabin and lay in bed. Stephen talked on and on. It was as if he needed to speak out. During these long 2 years in which he had withdrawn from socializing, he had told his wife that he had begun to think about a life in the countryside, where one could breathe fresh air every day and eat grown fruits and vegetables. Now, after a vacation in the countryside, this idea got into his brain even more strongly. The man described the life in the countryside with enthusiasm. Camille listened attentively, but did not quite agree. For example, to buy a house in the middle of nowhere. She would not want somewhere closer to civilization. She would not mind. She was not attracted to work in the vegetable garden and in the field to be able to travel to the nearest supermarket. This is a fundamental point when choosing a village dwelling. If they did decide to take that step, okay, Camille, good night. It's very late to get some rest before the road. Stephen, already from being just a loving husband, was gradually turning into a working surgeon, thinking about work. Yes, sweet dreams, darling. In the morning, they went out for breakfast on the terrace, and at the same time enjoyed the last notes of being in nature. Suddenly, the little boy from yesterday came running to them again. His family turned out to be neighbors from the next house. John, come here, to whom the mother said already rushed after the child, while the baby waved to Camille's tummy and returned to the excited woman. Why, Lealia? I wonder if that's what he calls girls. Funny. Camille stared at her husband, waiting for some clue on his part too. I don't know. He's a good kid. Come on, honey, let's go. It's getting kind of late. Oh, yeah. Stephen cleared the table while his wife was in the ladies' room. 10 minutes later, they were on the highway toward their town. The vacation had gone by faster than they would have liked, but everyone was satisfied and happy. A weight had fallen from their shoulders. Stephen was lost in his thoughts for a second and did not notice the truck coming straight at them on the highway. Stephen, Camille shouted, but it was too late. The man was unable to react. The ambulance came very quickly. There was a small hospital nearby, not so modern, but not bad. When Stephen woke up in the hospital bed, he did not immediately realize where he was. Everything swam in front of his eyes suddenly. The man came to his senses, and the memories came back overnight. Where is my wife? Where is she? Stephen tried to get up from the bed. With difficulty, he squeezed the questions out of himself. His whole body ached. Calm down, Stephen. Will you get your documents from the head doctor as soon as you can? The nurse settled the victim back on the bed, but it was useless to struggle with him. What paperwork? Where's Camille? Where's my wife? Threw questions into the air again and again. Concerned man. They'll be here soon, please. It won't make any difference if you collapse in a corridor somewhere exhausted. The girl put Stephen back in the hospital bed and then disappeared from sight. An hour or two passed, but no one showed up in the room. Stephen could not find a place to go and was all ready. He wanted to go in search of them, but a sharp pain piercing his legs and back stopped his intentions. In the ward, Stephen was pressed even by the walls, He was annoyed by the old creaking windows wobbling back and forth. The man wanted to know immediately where his wife Camille was. Why was she not put next to him? There were 3 more empty bunks. Terrible pictures opened before the eyes of the agitated husband. He tried to put away all these unbelievable stories, but for some reason they reappeared before his eyes again and again. "Stephen, hello. I'm the head doctor." At least someone finally came to Stephen's room. So eager to know the condition of his beloved wife. "Doctor, where's Camille?" "Camille is my wife. She's fine." Stephen stared at the doctor. "Unfortunately, your pregnant wife died. I'm sorry for your loss." The chief physician had reported the deaths of patients many times before, so he was prepared for any reaction from the relatives. "Pregnant Camille is pregnant. We're having a baby." Stephen didn't seem to hear that his wife was gone. He didn't want to realize it, so he just ignored the doctor's statement. "I'm sorry, you didn't hear. Your wife passed away. The gestation was very small, but the pregnancy was definitely confirmed by a blood test. I'm so sorry. I'll call a psychologist." The chief physician left the room still lying there, repeating the words, "Pregnant, pregnant. My Camille is pregnant." 6 months had passed since the tragedy. Stephen never went to work. He locked himself away at home like a recluse. He no longer cared about being a doctor or what the weather was like today, or what he would eat tomorrow. The man had withdrawn into himself, and he had no plans to go back. Life had collapsed completely. The obsession to end this cursed life was swirling in his head. Day and night blended into one incomprehensible lanky mess. Time had stopped. It was 7 a.m. or 3 a.m. for Stephen. It was all the same. Colleagues tried to help their friend, but all in vain. He aggressively fought off any unwanted meetings and conversations. Sometimes the man remembered that cute boy at the recreation center yelling "Yalla," and berated himself for not realizing his clue. If only he had known about his wife's pregnancy, he would have been more careful on the road. He had driven 50 kilometers an hour and sent all the honking daredevils away. "It's my fault. I could have prevented it. I could have saved my wife and our children." Stephen woke up and went to sleep blaming himself for the deaths of his loved ones. The wound of losing his son reopened as before. Everything came crashing down on the desperate surgeon. After a couple more months, he decided to sell the apartment and buy an old house in a remote village, which had died out many years ago. Only forest and silence surrounded the dwelling. To get away from people, that's what he wanted. And this place suited him best. In the city, Stephen remembered every street, every step in the entryway, every inch of the apartment that reminded him of his wife. It couldn't go on like this. It had been a year since the surgeon had moved into the village house. He was satisfied with the toilet outside and the dilapidated bathhouse. Instead of showering, Stephen plunged into the routine. With his head, he planted vegetables, engaged in landscaping. The man also fixed the old well, which was in a deplorable condition. All this helped Stephen to get away from thoughts of tragedies in his life. Of course, he sometimes had flashbacks. And at that time, he went into the forest, wanting to get lost somewhere or fall into the clutches of hungry forest animals. But the man always found his way home. Yes, and in a year of living in a village near the forest, he never saw any wild animals around. And I can't even die for all this, usually after such hikes. With these words, Stephen's day would end. He lay down on his lonely, hard bed and tried to sleep. The thoughts were overwhelming. The widowed surgeon more than ever. It seemed to him that fate was mocking him. Heaven had taken away the people most dear to him. And it was as if he was rejected every time he dared to take this deliberate step. That night, it was as it always was. Stephen had returned from the depths of the forest unharmed. Today, however, the man was so exhausted that he fell asleep in a matter of minutes, but nothing boded ill. A chilling howl came from the underworld. Stephen jumped out of bed. He was sure he had dreamed it, but he could not go back to sleep. The fatigue was gone. The wild howl was repeated with even greater duration. Stephen went cold and froze in place. The man, so eager to end his life, suddenly realized clearly that he did not want to die at all, especially not from something so terrifying that it made that sound. Jesus, what the hell is that? Stephen clutched his head. He wasn't in the mood for jokes. Her cotton feet refused to go to the test, but something had to be done. The widower introduced his wife beside him. If she were here now, he would run out of the house without a fraction of a doubt to turn on anyone who might do the slightest bit of harm to his beloved. Stephen took a knife just in case. And still he left the house. It was pitch black outside and he had no flashlights. He did not want to attract the attention of strangers who might wander into the light of his dwelling. There's a howl coming from the well. I wonder if the devil himself has come to deal with me. Stephen cringed at his own stupidity. Am I crazy? I haven't had a drink today. All right, we'll just have to go and see what's out there. He hurried to the place of this horrifying incident, that is, to the old well. Hello, is anyone there? The surgeon's voice drifted off into the depths of the structure. A howl came in reply, and Stephen immediately jumped back from the wall of the well. But heavens, the devil himself is talking to me. Again, the howl spread through the neighborhood. This time, however, the man sensed a note of uneasiness in the sound, as if it were a call for help or desperation. Who's there? Stephen leaned over the well again. Suddenly, a pitiful bark pierced the man's ears. Was it a dog? He stared in amazement at the youth's hole. After he realized that it was not a devil, but just a dog that had fallen into the well, Stephen quickly headed into the house to get the equipment to save the poor animal. Where'd you come from, poor thing? Did you get lost in the woods? Stephen perplexedly questioned the poor animal, which was still at the bottom of the well. After about 30 minutes, the man managed to lift the dog up and the widower. Once again, he was convinced it was just a fluffy pet, not a monster from hell itself. Baby, you're not even a year old. You're a hero. You survived out there in the depths and the dark for so long. Stephen warmed his new friend, fed him, and put him to bed with him. The dog was overjoyed. Such a fateful meeting. He tried to wag his tail, but there was not enough strength. I know, my good man, you're grateful. Let's go to sleep. I was so scared. You look so weak. The man fell asleep, and so did his woolly neighbor. At this time, Evelyn, a woman of about 35, was having a hard time. She had only left the car for 5 minutes to go to the toilet on the road. There were no gas stations or gas stations with ladies' rooms in the vicinity. Her favorite dog, Leon, jumped out of the car door, frightened by some strange noise on Leon's radio. The woman spotted her pet near her, told him not to go too far away. The situation got out of control when the radio repeated the unpleasant sound that terrified Leon. The dog began to run as fast as he could. Evelyn pulled on her jeans and followed the member of her small family. After all, she had no one else but Leon. Leon is cute. Please come to mommy. Evelyn tearfully shouted into the forest, but to no avail. She got desperate and started throwing curses in the direction of the damn radio she had turned on so that going to her friend's house through the forest road wouldn't be so scary. Leon, come back. I'm begging you, yummy, 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 yummy. The woman threw words in the air that could lure her friend. After 2 hours of waiting and wandering along the edge of the road, Evelyn decided she would not leave the dog alone in the woods. I'll sleep her here in the car and then go looking for her in the morning. I just need to call Jenna so she doesn't worry. She pulled herself together and threw away the thought that her baby could die in these wild woods. So Evelyn, you're strong and Leon is strong. He's your pet. It's going to be okay. The woman wiped the tears rolling down her cheeks and dialed her friend. Jenna, I'm sorry, you must have been asleep. Evelyn first apologized for the late call, but she had nothing else to do. Honey, what are you crying about? What happened? Jenna got very agitated. Leon ran off into the woods for his friend. When I went out to go to the bathroom, Jesus, he's alone in this huge forest in the dark. I can't find my place. Evelyn was seized by a new wave of panic. Poor Leon, let me get there just in time for morning. I'll be there. You won't go looking for him at night. Promise me, my friend appealed to my common sense. No, I thought I'd sleep in the car and go looking for him in the morning. Evelyn calmed Jenna down. Okay, well, I'm gonna go pack. No, that's okay. I'll look for him myself. He can't have gotten far. He's probably hiding in the bushes nearby, but he's afraid to come out because it's pitch black. I hope so, but call me anytime. I'll get in the car right away, you got me. My friend made it clear that she could be relied on. She really was. Jenna had become like a sister to Evelyn. When the woman lost her husband in a car accident, her friend pulled her out of a prolonged depression. Jenna even took vacations at her own expense. In order to spend more time with Evelyn, there was no one else the young widow wanted to be around. But Jenna would still show up and do her best. One day, Evelyn locked herself in the apartment for a week and didn't answer her phone. Jenna couldn't sleep or eat. Once again, she dropped everything and rushed out. When she reached Evelyn's apartment, she pushed open the locked door and was stunned. Evelyn had collected about 500 paper cranes. They stood here and there. The woman with the calluses on her hands didn't even look up at her guest. That's when Jenna realized something had to be done. The next day, she left Evelyn at home for a couple hours and went out. She came back with a fluffy puppy in her hands. A courier was standing nearby with all sorts of things. For the dog beds, toys, leashes, and so much more. And so Leon came into Evelyn's life. Jenna found an effective way to save her friend. She gave her a new lease on life. After all, the puppy needed to be walked 3 times a day, fed and played with. And when the fluffy lump began to flirt with the owner, sharing his toys with her, she instantly felt a surge of strength. This dog had given her a new self, and now that he was scared and in trouble, Evelyn couldn't just leave him to die in the woods. It was the long-awaited early morning. The woman never slept a wink. She remembered the moments of joy he had given her. In all that time, Leon. Evelyn, armed with her pet's favorite treats, went in search of him. Leon, my boy, come to mommy, I'll give you some yummy treats. At the Stephen house, the morning started early as well. The man replayed the previous night's events in his head and grinned. Really thought the devil had come to my neck of the woods. The widower was laughing, and his new friend was wagging his tail, running at the feet of the owner of the house. Baby, what are we going to call you? I don't think your owners will find you here, so you'll have to live here, brother. Stephen picked up the pet in his arms and licked him on the nose. Stephen came to life. He even took a little distance from the tragedy in his life. Now he had a furry little neighbor who needed care and attention. You should get a collar and a leash, or you'll run off into the woods, and then we'll have to look for you. Stephen was a skillful surgeon after all, so he quickly coped with the task of sewing the necessary attributes. You'll be Pushko. Stephen chose a name for his new friend. According to his appearance, the dog was extremely fluffy and soft. Having finished small chores and breakfast, the man took the dog for a walk. They walked for a while along the edge of the woods. The little guy did his business, and they both returned to the house. The excited woolly child wanted to play, and the already feral widower was happy to have someone to play with. The couple ran here and there, throwing various homemade toys at each other. In general, the atmosphere in the house was painted with new colors, and even so iridescent that the man literally blossomed before his eyes. With every new minute, Jenna, he's nowhere to be found. I'm going crazy. Evelyn was not as happy this morning as Stephen. How could she be? You just hang in there. He'll turn up. It's your Leon, isn't it? He's always following you around like a tail. He'll smell your scent and come running. Just keep calling, honey. Jenna gave hope to her friend, but she had little faith in the success of her search. The forest through which the path lay was really too thick and deep. Jenna realized that even a dog with an excellent sense of smell could get lost there. And Leon was a city dweller, and he was used to mostly playing and spending his days carefree. No one taught him how to find his way home by scent, or how to survive in a dangerous environment. Her friend couldn't afford to tell Evelyn what she thought, since she'd already been through enough in her life. Jenna was also afraid that the lingering depression of losing her pet would take years off Evelyn's life again. Jenna, you could call some kind of rescue service. There are people who search for lost people in the woods. Evelyn asked the question she wanted a positive answer to. They wouldn't be looking for an animal. People get lost every day, and there are barely enough staff and volunteers to find them. Jenna has unfortunately upset her friend. Then tell them I'm the one who's lost. Evelyn blurted out in a burst of anger. So what are you up to? Stay in the car. I'll be right there. Her friends suddenly became anxious and started to leave. Only come with the rescue team, because I won't be in the car. I'm going into the woods to look for my Leon, and I'll either come back with him or I won't come back at all until I meet him. Evelyn hung up. Evelyn, don't be stupid. Jenna shouted into the void, then added my girlfriend. Why are you so stubborn? Evelyn was already somewhere among the many trees. She cried in the very first minutes, but that didn't stop her. The woman walked with confidence. She could not imagine life without Leon, and that gave her strength. She called the dog again and again. She offered him treats, lured him with her favorite toys. But she never succeeded. She could hear the sounds of the forest from all sides, a brook making itself known, then dry creaking branches, then leaves swaying in the wind. But the most needed and important sound of all, the sound of her Leon's voice, Evelyn never heard. Had she known that her baby was fed and safe, she would have calmed down a little. But unfortunately, the Stephen house was not to be found on her way, which meant she had no chance to make sure her dog was alive. Fluffy, you're smart, aren't you? Stephen asked for his friend's paw, and he gladly gave it to him. The morning flew by. The man watched with delight as Fluffy dealt with his old wicker rug in the hallway. Stephen did not swear. He only smiled and encouraged his neighbor. For all the new busy games, even if they were fun eating his slippers, by lunchtime they were tired and hungry. Stephen provided Cannon with a good meal and then tucked him into bed with him, with full bellies. It was a great idea to lie down for a while. Thank you, buddy, for coming into my life. Stephen stroked the dog's bulging tummy from the treats. It didn't take long for him to respond. The puppy licked his nose again. Evelyn, on the other hand, lamented the fate that had taken her Leon. She couldn't believe that she would never see him again. It seemed to the woman that things couldn't get any worse. However, after Evelyn put her hand in her pocket and did not find her phone there, she realized that she would definitely not find her way to the car on her own. Neither an electronic map nor help from her friend's call would be available now. In her heart, the woman still hoped that Jenna would call emergency services and not just come to rescue her from the woods. Unfortunately, that's exactly what Jenna was doing. The friend raced down the highway looking for Evelyn's car on the side of the road. She hadn't called any service or asked for any help. Jenna was sure Evelyn wouldn't go deep into the woods, so she didn't bother the professionals. And the two of them would wait by the roadside for a while for Leon, and then go as they had planned to visit her for a few days. Leon, Leon. Evelyn had already torn her voice in attempts to shout to her lost friend. Boy, my mom can't live without you. Come out, the woman yelled again. What was the strength? Suddenly, Evelyn heard voices. Most likely they were mushroom hunters, as hunting is forbidden here, and there are no places for gawkers to walk either. Anybody here? The woman moved toward the sound of Wendy. Do you hear someone yelling? The old man pushed his wife in the side. What are you shoving, Grandpa? I don't hear anything. The old woman rolled her eyes and continued looking for edible mushrooms. I'm here. I'm lost. Evelyn had already gotten very close to the couple, so even the old woman heard the call for help come here. We're here. Wendy folded her hands at her mouth to make the sound she was making louder and clearer. Oh, thank God. I can see you. Wait for me, please. Evelyn saw the silhouettes and ran towards them. Sweetheart, you're forgetting something here. Even the locals are afraid to go into these woods. We've lived in the middle of nowhere for 60 years, and we only walk on trampled paths. Our own paths. The old man took his head in his hands. I lost my dog. She ran out of the car and disappeared into the woods. I don't know how I can find her. Please help me, I'm begging you. Leon is as dear to me as a son. Evelyn begged to get some help from people who knew the area. You won't find the dog if he's run off into the woods. That's the end of it. Deal with it. Wendy's daughter waved her hands. Don't say so, I'll find him. Evelyn burst into tears, realizing that the old men's words might be true. I wouldn't advise you to wander around here alone. Follow this path and you'll come to a road. Don't turn off anywhere. You'll get confused again. We're going home soon, so we can't help you. The old man pointed in the direction and assured her that she would not see anyone else in the forest today. Maybe someone lives nearby. Foresters or something. Evelyn thought that the dog might have come out on the smell of food or the light from the windows of the house. Let me think about it. I don't think so. The old man started going through his options, but all the people he could think of that year had already moved closer to civilization. Hey, Grandpa, you old fool has lost your memory again, and that widowed surgeon just lives alone. Wendy smacked her husband lightly with her wand on his forgetful head. Can you please tell me how to get to his house? I would be very grateful. Hope shone through the tears in Evelyn's eyes. It'll take you 2 hours to walk there. I wouldn't recommend it. Daughter. The old woman cautioned the woman, but still described the way in detail. Evelyn hurried on. Soon it would be evening, and it would begin to darken quickly. She had plenty of strength, as hope was the strongest motivator to find Leon. I'll find you. Don't doubt your mom. The dog's owner repeated these words under her breath. Every few minutes for about an hour, Evelyn walked without stopping. Then she sat down to catch her breath for a few seconds. The woman glanced at her wristwatch and became a little alarmed. It was starting to get dark in the forest much sooner than she had planned. The tall, thick trees were eating up all the light, and it was difficult to navigate the terrain. Evelyn decided not to take any more breaks and increased her speed. She started running. Breathing was getting harder and harder, but she didn't stop moving. After a long time, Evelyn reached what she thought was the finish line. But her legs gave out, and she tumbled downward. The woman lost consciousness and remained lying on the grass among cones and some unknown forest plants. Jenna wandered along the side of the road, trying to call her friend. The phone was out of range. Jenna couldn't put it off any longer, so she called the emergency services. They reacted lightning fast and immediately sent out several cars with professionals and search dogs. Hello, how quick are you? Jenna greeted the emergency personnel while standing by her friend's car. She explained the situation, that she had gone to look for the dog and had apparently gotten lost. The search party disappeared into the woods. Jenna joined one of the teams and also went in search of Evelyn. The rescuers used loudspeakers and various other devices to attract attention in the woods. With their help, lost people can easily see signs even from afar and start moving towards them. However, there had been no sign of Evelyn in the vicinity for several hours. The night passed without any success. What to do? What if something had happened to her? Jenna couldn't stop the tears. They just kept coming. Don't worry. Sometimes people panic and even start hiding from searchers. There's no need to jump to conclusions. A woman from the rescue team tried to calm her desperate friend. I hope you're right. The recovered Jenna thanked the woman for her help. I've been on a search team for over 20 years since I was a young girl. Believe me, the accident rate is minuscule. Let's hope for the best. The woman patted her friend Evelyn on the shoulder and said it was time for them to head out again. Not a moment of daylight was to be wasted. After all, at night, the likelihood of finding a missing person decreased dramatically. Jenna shouted her friend's name and also did not forget about Leon. And Leon heard a familiar voice. He began to whimper loudly. Stephen didn't understand what had happened. Why was his shaggy friend behaving like that? The man stroked the baby on the head, but he kicked and lashed out. Then the widower decided that the dog wanted to go to the toilet. He put the collar on him and took hold of the leash. They went out for a walk, but Pushok was pulling as if the marathon was nearing its end, and they had to overtake all the competitors. Stephen even increased the speed of his steps to keep up with the runner. Soon voices were heard, and the man stopped. He did not want to meet anyone, so he tried to take Pushka in his arms and hurry into the house. However, the dog was not going to go backwards. He began to pull on the leash more than ever. Stephen once again approached Fluffy to calm him down, but he broke free of the improvised collar and ran away from the surgeon at breakneck speed. Stephen rushed after him, Leon. Jenna saw Evelyn's dog and opened her arms as she always did when she met him. Leon jumped into his favorite aunt's arms and started licking her face with his wet tongue. Leon, how happy am I? This is her doggie. Jenna showed the dog to the search party. Excuse me, this is your dog. The widower did come out to talk to people about the find. No, it's not mine. My friend Jenna looked puzzled at the overgrown, ungroomed man who looked more like a forest animal. He fell down my well. I got him and I got him out. He lived with me for a while. Stephen was sad that he'd never play with the dog he'd really gotten used to so quickly. Thank you, Jenna, exhaled, learning that his time wasn't spent in the dangerous woods. At least he's in a home with a caring person. Where's the landlady? Stephen asked Jenna if she'd told him what had happened. The former surgeon volunteered to help in the search. After all, he often wandered through the woods and knew the area well enough. Jenna thanked the man and offered him to join their search party, but he refused. He only clarified where they had left the cars and went deeper into the forest. Stephen did not want to weave with the others, searching every meter. He had long ago learned that alone was the easiest way to navigate in the forest. Stephen headed for the darkest impenetrable places in the neighborhood to check them out first. In none of these places, however, did he find any sign of man. Everything was as before. Wondering what kind of mistress this glorious dog had, the man caught himself thinking he was curious to see the woman. "Aya, I'm the injured one here." Evelyn woke up and heard a voice nearby. Speaking was extremely difficult for her. The bruise on her head was making itself felt. She could not move her arms or legs, nor could she raise herself up. She could not move her arms or legs, nor could she raise herself, but only tried to make her voice heard and save Evelyn. Stephen wandered toward the sound of the voice. "Help!" The woman struggled with each letter. Her eyes were dark. It seemed as if she would faint again. But she couldn't let that happen, for then she could not be helped. Evelyn pulled herself together and shouted as loudly as she could. Stephen now knew exactly where to run. He went up to the missing woman's side, and within 3 minutes he was standing there. "Evelyn." The man tried to lift the unfortunate victim of the accidental fall, but she was in too much pain when he started to move her. "Okay, don't move. We'll figure something out in a moment." Stephen stepped aside and shouted to the search party that he had found the woman. No one answered. Apparently, they were headed in the opposite direction. It wouldn't be long before they got here. So he decided to drag the injured Evelyn home somehow, and then look for the rescue team to hand her over to them. "I'll put you on my shirt and carry you slowly." Okay, the widower took off his old shirt and put it next to Evelyn. Then he very carefully and gently moved the woman on top of her with the edge of the shirt. Stephen tied on the woman's jeans and tried pulling the slip was not the best. Adding some twigs. Things went faster for the resourceful surgeon. A short time later, the injured Evelyn was already lying on the bed in Stephen's house. She had recovered a little after he had given her water and treated her wounds. "They found your dog. I had him." Stephen started talking to bring the woman to her senses somehow. "Leon, really? Oh, thank God." Evelyn really perked up and even got out of bed. "Careful, don't move too much. You may have a fractured femur and a concussion." "I'm a doctor, so I know what I'm talking about." Stephen explained to the woman that rushing to the dog on her own would be very dangerous in her position. "I'm sorry, you're right, but I'm feeling better. I got some rest." How long had I been in the woods? Evelyn stared at the man. She found him pleasant and caring, like an angel who had saved both Leon and her. She appreciated that he was a doctor, which meant he was educated and smart, though he looked sloppy and unglossy. But she didn't care about that fact. Something fluttered in her heart. Of course, it could be a feeling of gratitude, especially for Leon. But who knows what else that feeling could mean. Stephen, too, had taken a fancy to the young woman. He looked at her in a different way from the other women. After his wife's death, everyone seemed repulsive and unworthy of his attention. His Camille outshone everyone even after her death. She left no chance for women to snag her beloved husband. Camille was long gone, but her image always rose in front of the widower's eyes when he passed by the female representatives. But now, looking at Evelyn, Camille's spirit receded. Stephen admired the precise features of the woman. He watched mesmerized as her breasts rose and then slowly lowered. The way her lips moved, the way her hair stayed up on the pillow. The question that Evelyn asked repeatedly dispelled Stephen's misplaced thoughts. So how long was I in the woods? Apparently all night. The man shared a guess since he didn't know when exactly she was lost. What a nightmare. Did Leon turn up though? Thank you for taking my doggy in. He's been like family to me since the accident in the woods. 2 months passed. Leon pleased his owner with his return, but she noticed that he had become a sad dog. He didn't want to play as much as he used to. He was less and less willing, eating his favorite food. The woman took him to the veterinary clinic, but they didn't find any diseases. They only prescribed vitamins and said that the dog is just sad and has no mood. They advised him to find something interesting to do, like a doggy pool or some other creative fun. Evelyn, that's nonsense. What's a dog pool? They get paid to recommend their sponsors. Don't even think about it. Just buy him some new goodies. Jenna is on the phone trying to reassure a friend who doesn't know how to help her pet. It doesn't work. Already tried all the companies, even gave him treats for cats. He doesn't like anything. It's like he's depressed. Evelyn rolled her eyes at her inability to help Leon. Girlfriend, what if he misses that guy? Jenna suddenly threw in an unexpected development. What man? Evelyn didn't even realize what she was talking about the first time. Well, the one Stephen found in the woods. I thought he said he was very attached to him. He'd wag his tail and bring him toys. Oh, really? I don't know. That can't be true. Would Leon miss a stranger so much that he'd refuse to eat? It's strange, to be honest. The landlady couldn't think of anything like that. Well, yes, but I pay that bearded savior a visit if I were you. What have you got to lose? Jenna said goodbye to her friend, but she didn't even realize that she had planted many different thoughts in her head. Evelyn was already thinking daily about Stephen, who seemed very nice and attractive. There was something about him that stirred her heart, but they had said goodbye so dryly when Jenna had taken her from his house. He didn't say anything to her, nor did he invite her to visit. It would be inappropriate to just drop in uninvited. Leon, do you think we should go for a visit? Evelyn stared at her pet. He jumped into her arms and barked loudly. What do you really want? Do you like him, Stephen? Leon barked again. All right, we'll go. I hope we don't get lost now. We'll set up a paid navigator that works off the grid. Evelyn told her friend that she was going to visit Stephen in the morning, and then she dropped by her place. It was a one-way trip anyway. Jenna was very excited, but gave a bunch of admonishments to Evelyn and about the new state-of-the-art collar with the microchip, about online maps, and about stocking up on food and water for the trek through the woods. The women had a long discussion about all the details of the trip. No one wanted any more hassles. Only Leon was glowing with happiness and running here and there, as if realizing that soon he would see his new friend, whom he liked so much. In the car, Evelyn no longer turned on the radio. She also got herself the latest fancy devices for tracking dogs and cats. All in all, this time the woman was well prepared for a long walk through the woods. Leon was sleeping peacefully in the back seat. He was calm and relaxed. The dog was no longer anxious or refusing to eat. Miracles or no miracles. And the friend's advice about visiting Stephen was working before it had even begun. Leon's depression vanished as if it had never happened. The trees flashed through the window one by one. Evelyn was reminded of her dead husband. It was the car ride that had been fatal to him and had taken his life. But the woman no longer felt that anxiety in her soul. She had finally let go of the man with whom she had been so happy. She would not forget this episode of her life, but she could not live it any longer. Leon, what if he doesn't want us here? We're uninvited. Evelyn decided to distract herself from philosophical thoughts and have a little chat with her friend, who woke up and started whining. The dog howled, then barked, then howled again, eager to get to his destination. His emotions were pouring out, and that was a good sign. You think he's waiting for us? I don't know, kid. I liked him, though. The doctor's a dog-loving, caring doctor. I wish he had a daddy like that. Evelyn didn't even know why. She asked me that. It is unlikely that a person who lives far from civilization is even capable of falling in love and starting a family. Evelyn thought it was something on the edge of fantasy. She knew nothing about Stephen, but she dared judge that he had not moved to the woods for a good life. How did she know he'd moved there anyway? Perhaps he'd lived in the woods all his life as a recluse. But then Evelyn went back to the man's profession and still came to the conclusion that he had worked and lived somewhere near the hospital and people, and had gone to the forest for his own unknown reasons. She wanted to know absolutely everything about this mysterious forest dweller, down to his hobbies and favorite books. She twisted a whole series of questions in her head that she would be sure to ask when she met him. The meeting would take place very soon. The car pulled up to the place where the story of Leon's escape had started last time. Evelyn asked her friend if he was planning to walk alone in the forest again. Then she laughed out loud. After all the things were packed, the woman ducked into an online map to find the right one. The direction Leon let out a loud bark, then pulled the leash. "Okay, buddy, take your time." Evelyn told the pet to wait while she sorted out the confusing map. Leon pulled his mistress along again. "What's the matter, honey? Do you have the road memorized?" The dog jumped on the spot with joy and excitement. "Well, you're my head. I'll trust you. Come on, boy." Evelyn followed Leon, who did not hesitate to advance meter by meter. It was as if he knew every turn, every nook and cranny. The woman was surprised at the dog's unexpected talent, but she was not worried or anxious. She relied completely on Leon, and the way he ran forward happily showed that it was the right decision. Leon barked, very loudly, and Evelyn looked up. Stephen's house. Good boy. Here's a goodie. The woman took the treat out of her pocket and thanked her guide for finding the right place so easily. All that remained was to knock on the door and explain to the near stranger why they had come. Evelyn had doubts. Did they even need to come here uninvited? A whirlpool of thoughts swirled in her head. The woman even blushed. What would she say to a grown man? That her dog had missed him and brought her here sounded like wild absurdity. It couldn't have been made up any more nonsense. As Evelyn stood still and decided what she should do, a familiar Evelyn voice sounded nearby. Stephen walked over and stared in surprise at the unexpected guests. Stephen. The woman couldn't get a word out. It had been the same when they had first met, when she had been lying on the ground. But then it had been physically difficult for her to say anything. Now there was nothing in the way, but words didn't come to mind at all. "What brings you here again?" The widower couldn't believe his happiness. He remembered Evelyn every day, her face, her lips, her body. He longed to meet this woman again, but he knew it was impossible. They hadn't exchanged contacts or agreed to communicate. They simply broke up that day, and that was it. There was nothing else to suggest that they would meet again. We held out to Evelyn. To be honest, Leon had stopped eating. He was sad. A friend suggested that maybe it's because of you. I mean, he misses you. The woman frowned at the awkwardness of the situation. She'd never been there before. I missed him too. I've often thought of him. I confess I embarrassed you too. There was a pause. No one could resume the dialogue. Let's go inside. Why are we standing here? Let's have some tea. Stephen was the first to break the silence. Yes, well, Leon, let's go. Evelyn commanded her pet, but he hurried to Stephen's house without her. The man prepared a hot drink, set a small table. All modest. As befits a man who lives in the woods far from supermarkets. I'd be very interested to know if you've always lived in this house. You're a doctor. It seems you worked somewhere around here. There's a hospital in the village. Evelyn finally decided to ask a question. I lived in the city, moved to the woods after my wife died. That's how my husband died too. Evelyn was surprised at this coincidence. Though it must be unpleasant then, we understand each other. Stephen talked a little about himself, his life, what he does in the woods. And Evelyn shared her story. It turned out that these two are quite similar, preferring fishing vacations. Active sports. Even their food choices are the same. So much in common. It was even surprising. Stephen smiled and soon started cooking something substantial to treat Evelyn. And Leon, at that time, the woman's cell phone rang. Jenna decided to find out how her friend had gotten to Stephen's house and if she had gotten there at all. The connection was terrible, so you could hear through a word. However, Evelyn assured her friend that she was in good health, and also reported that it was Leon who had led her to the right path. Jenna was very surprised, but praised their favorite woolly friend. The women chatted a bit about Stephen as well. Evelyn didn't want him to hear, so she went outside. "Jenna, he's so thoughtful. I don't know, I think I like him." Evelyn had opened up to a close friend. She couldn't deny it. At least this way, she'd get a chance to hear Evelyn's side of the story. "Are you serious? He may have saved you, but he doesn't look good. Did you find out anything about him? How he lived? What he did for a living?" My friend was taken aback by this unexpected news. Evelyn had never said a word about having any sympathy for her rescuer. "We told each other a lot. He, too, had lost a wife, a child, 2 children. His wife died pregnant. I still can't get over it. It's so sad." Evelyn felt sorry for Stephen because he'd been through 3 tragedies, and that could bring anyone down. Sounds scary, girlfriend. But it explains why he quit being a doctor and took off to live in the woods. "Yeah, Jenna. It's been hard on him. Okay, more later. I'm fine. Thank you for worrying." Evelyn thanked her friend for her support and invaluable attention on her part. "Good luck, sweetheart. If this is your destiny, I'm happy for you. I'll be a witness at the wedding." The women said goodbye, and Evelyn returned to the house. My friend called, asked how I had gotten a guest, explained the reason for going out. "That's a good friend you have. She's been looking all over the woods for you." Stephen recalled how Jenna had been worried sick until she took Evelyn away from the cabin in the woods. "Yeah, she's like that. Stephen, let's use the first name. I was going to suggest you too. You mean you were braver?" The man laughed, and the guest followed. 6 months later, Stephen and Evelyn were married. The surgeon recovered at the hospital. He was welcomed back with open arms. The 2 lovers breathed life into each other. They shared stories from the past, but with smiles on their faces. Stephen and Evelyn loved Leona because it was this dog that had joined their hearts. It is unlikely that the woman would have dared to visit the forest dweller if not for the bad mood of her favorite friend. "Leon, don't jump on Mommy's belly," Stephen shouted to his pet, who had climbed on top of the pregnant Evelyn. "It's nothing, Stephen. Don't worry." "He's light as a feather." Stephen walked over to his wife and hugged her. 2 wounded hearts finally found their long-awaited happiness. And in between them, wagging their tails, their most beloved furry friend, Leon.